Another season of disappointment after not reaching the Super Bowl, not even winning a playoff game. So what should the Minnesota Vikings do to fix this? The Vikings' loss to the New York Giants might be perplexing to some, considering the Vikings had a home field advantage and had beaten the Giants earlier in the season, albeit on a last-second 61-yard field goal. But one player who cannot be blamed for letting the team down due to his stellar and exemplary performance is wide receiver Justin Jefferson. This is why the Vikings have to do whatever it takes to keep Justin Jefferson happy. Not only is Jefferson the best player on the team, but he might also be the best wide receiver in the league. He is well on his way to achieving record-breaking numbers which would eclipse former great wide receivers who wore the Minnesota Vikings uniform, such as Hall of Famers Chris Carter and Randy Moss. Jefferson this season was the most targeted wide receiver in the league with 184 targets. He also caught the most passes with 128 receptions and had the most receiving yards with 1,809. Jefferson's receiving yards this season rank 6th in the all-time NFL single-season leaders in receiving yards. He was just 155 yards short of tying Calvin Johnson's record of most receiving yards in a season, which was set in 2012. It is a feat of a milestone that Jefferson could certainly accomplish, because when he has the ball, he becomes a lightning-quick athlete, which no one currently in the NFL could defend against. He is so good and such a threat that schemes are drawn up to use Jefferson as a decoy for trick plays, like the one we saw in the playoff game against the Giants, except on that occasion, it didn't work. But the fact remains that Justin Jefferson is an explosive and unstoppable athlete that the Vikings need to keep happy. But how would they go about doing it? Well, the Vikings could trade their quarterback, Kirk Cousins, who made some high-profile blunders in the playoff loss. The most notable one came at the end of the game when he inexplicably threw a 3-yard pass on 4th down to their tight end TJ Hawkinson, who was immediately wrapped up by a Giants defender, and the team came well short of where they needed to be to get the first down. The problem wasn't the play design, it was the throw. Cousins threw a ball that was high and wide, which led to Hawkinson having to readjust and for the Vikings to be ousted. If Justin Jefferson had a higher caliber quarterback like the likes of Lamar Jackson, maybe the Vikings would enter next season as the favorites to win the Super Bowl. Who wouldn't want to see a combination of Jackson and Jefferson on the field? Right now in the NFL quarterback landscape, there are definite tiers from unproven to world-class, and Kirk Cousins is somewhere in the middle, and nowhere near the elite level of Lamar Jackson. In these times of player empowerment, it is best to keep the superstar happy no matter the cost, rather than deal him away for assets and begin to start all over again. Especially for the Vikings, who need to show some success soon after all the deals they've made in the past. But their problems aren't just down to the quarterback, who is heavily reliant on Justin Jefferson, and their issue isn't limited to keeping their star happy. There is a whole mess waiting to be cleaned up. Starting with the defense. The stats for the defense ranked 28th in points scored by the other team with 427 and 31st in the total amount of yards given up with 6,608. The Vikings gave up more yards than they actually earned themselves, and somehow they managed to get a home game in the playoffs, winning 13 of their 17 games. And they have given up so many points to the opposition that most of the games were high-scoring shootouts. The only time they were truly trounced was when they lost at home to the Dallas Cowboys 40-3. And just on one occasion did the defense manage to keep their opponent to one score or fewer, and that was on opening week against the Green Bay Packers. So it's fair to say that one of the problems looming over the Vikings is their defense, and the blame should fall on the shoulders of their defensive coordinator, Ed Donatell. Donatell started as a defensive back coach in the NFL in 1990 and first got the defensive coordinator job back in 2000 with the Green Bay Packers, where he lasted for 4 years, then moved to the Atlanta Falcons where he performed the same duties. Donatell then left at the end of the 2006 season to be a special assistant with the New York Jets. Then he floated around the NFL carousel as a secondary coach before getting the Denver Broncos defensive coordinator job. It was at Denver where head coach Kevin O'Connell thought that his experienced coach could bring him and the Vikings success. O'Connell and the Vikings organization were rudely awoken to the fact that Donatell was a one-season wonder at Denver. It also exposed Kevin O'Connell for his lack of understanding on the defensive side of the ball. He thought by hiring an experienced coach that the defense would be sorted, and he would not have to worry about that end of the field. But O'Connell, being the offensive-minded coach that he is, and as great as he is at setting up schemes that allow Justin Jefferson to be wide open, has some glaring issues on the offensive side of the ball. The biggest one without question is at running back, with the deflated performance of Dalvin Cook this season. The once-upon-a-time dominating running back has been humbled this season. In 2020, he had 1,557 yards, scoring 16 touchdowns in 14 games. 2 seasons later, he only managed 1,173 yards and 8 touchdowns in 17 games. That's 50% fewer touchdowns and 384 yards fewer while he played 3 more games. Something was clearly not right with Dalvin Cook, and there are people who are claiming that the coach's decision to want to feed Jefferson more touches was the reason. But we don't see that being the case. A team can have 2 superstars, one that's on the ground and one that's through the air. It seems as though Cook has lacked that explosiveness that is always associated with him. This is why it may be time to move on from Dalvin Cook, who is still regarded as a premier back, and get a few draft picks that can be used to bolster the defense or bring in some fresh meat at the running back position. At 27, Cook might have about 4 years left at the most before his time is up as an elite back. This is why the Vikings should consider looking at options in terms of cashing in on their primary running back. Because, well, let's face it, this team needs some fixing. And another area they can look to fix is the wide receiver department. These days, elite teams have a double wide receiver threat, and that isn't the case in Minnesota. Adam Thielen, while playing decently, isn't going to cut it anymore next season if the Vikings want to advance in the playoffs. The Vikings need fresher legs and stronger hands if they want to draw the defense's attention away from Justin Jefferson. It would make the quarterbacks and offensive coordinators' life a lot easier and much more fun. And there's a whole bunch of interesting wide receivers entering free agency that the Vikings can shop for and make an instant splash next season. One name that comes to mind is Allen Lazard of the Green Bay Packers. If the Vikings manage to sign him, not only would the addition be a boost to their team, but it will also hurt their divisional rivals. Lazard would be an excellent number 2 receiver and a reliable one too. Another name worth mentioning is Jacoby Myers. His season with the Patriots was his best in terms of touchdowns scored in his career, where he had 6. He is young, he's got great hands and a good vertical leap, and could cause a lot of problems for defending cornerbacks. But will the Vikings address all of these issues? Well, it's difficult to say at this moment, but we do know that the options are there for Minnesota. They can keep Justin Jefferson happy by signing an MVP caliber quarterback in Lamar Jackson. They can find a better defensive coordinator, someone who has balance between experience and ingenuity. They can let go of Dalvin Cook and get draft picks to help them stay fresher, and they can shop in the free agency market for a wide receiver too to complement Justin Jefferson. As we said, the options are clear and available for the Vikings. It's just a matter of whether they want to pull the trigger and make a real run for the Super Bowl next season. So what do you think about the Vikings? What should they do in the offseason? Please let us know in the comments down below, but before you go, if you still want to watch awesome NFL content like this, please watch the next video that will pop on your screen.